good evening. I'm Julie Chen.
Wake up, everybody!
But first,
I cannot. On my daughter's birthday. Disgusting. Anybody want cake?
I want to welcome you guys all to my big brother funeral.
I can't find an individual to hate because I hate you all.
Welcome to Not Game Home Personal. Hey, we are a Big Brother podcast here to talk about all things Big Brother, more specifically the events of this past week, maybe 2 weeks. We got some time to catch up on Big Brother 26. I'm Nathan. This is Tony. Tony, it's one heck of a season. That's what I'll say to start off.
It is one heck of a season, and it's the worst season for me to be so just like spacey on it and like not paying attention, because so from everything I've seen, it's been super fun, but it's probably the least I've paid attention to a season since I started watching Big Brother, and I don't know why.
I think that's okay because, like I said, I think last year we talked about it might be more enjoyable for people who just watch the episodes and don't get caught up in the feeds, you know, of the oh, is the vote going to flip? Is it not going to flip? Oh, there's no strategy going on, you know? And so I think it's okay, and we might have some different perspectives here, right, on things that are happening, which could be good. What I will say, though, I think that, all that said, I'm going to contradict myself. I think this is one of the best seasons where watching the feeds doesn't hurt your viewing, because it feels like for the past maybe 3-4 weeks now, we keep going into Thursday night, and I don't know where the vote's going, despite me keeping up very strongly with the feeds on Thursday. I had no idea what was going to happen tonight, even up until the vote, and it feels like some of them don't even know. And we learned that last week, which we do need to talk about last week, where despite there being a plan and having an idea, like, okay, I think this is where the votes are going to go, turns out in hindsight, some of them weren't even sure until that night when they were sitting there getting ready to cast their vote. So a lot is changing on the fly. I think the AI arena helps that a lot. I think the chaotic players help that a lot. But yeah, no, I'm having fun with the chaos, that's for sure.
Yeah, they have to like think about the idea of like, okay, if this person were to win, what will I do? But they don't have to accept the fact that they're going to be betraying somebody until in that moment. So like they just like put off actually making the decision until it's like, oh, we have to do this now. We have 2 minutes. Like, let's figure out what we're going to do. It's awesome. And that's the tough part, is I don't know if my viewing experience and me being so high on the season is because I haven't been paying as close attention and mostly just the show, or this entirely new thing that's been introduced. I think it's the latter. I think the AI arena has been super great. I think Tucker is also the perfect person for the AI arena because he's dominating, but he's so fun to watch that it makes it okay. If it was someone unpleasant who was dominating in this way, we would not be enjoying it the same way.
Well, let's start with Tucker. Let's just get right into it. Obviously, he has been the storyline for weeks now, and only continues to be the star of the show, despite Quinn's best effort of trying to be the center of all things in the house. I mean, it is crazy. Like, I think any other season, the storyline would be like Quinn. This is Quinn's season. He has all the power. He messed it all up. His rise, his downfall. But, like, somehow Tucker is even one-upping that, which I'm not even... Okay, week 1, the story of the season would have been Angela. She would have been the face. And somehow she is non-existent from, like, the game, despite having one of the most explosive, what I would describe as a bad first HOH week. And here comes Tucker. So I think the conversation that I would be curious to hear your thoughts on is, are we being hypocritical in our praise of Tucker, and not me and you, but also the entire fandom, everyone who is a fan of him, despite having an entire season last year complaining about someone like Jag winning every single competition? Are we the hypocrites, or is there some difference in what is happening here?
I think there's a difference between winning a lot in the beginning and winning a lot late. First of all, like winning a lot late is boring. Now it for some reason just feels more entertaining. Is that a fair difference? Maybe not, but that's kind of my first instinct. And also, there's something about being a charming, entertaining player who is winning a lot. That fixes a lot. If you're likable and like fun to watch.
What are you saying about Jag right now?
I like Jag. If you go back and listen to our show last year, I like Jag. Jag's not the most entertaining player we've ever seen.
Sure.
But I don't even know who's like a great example of like that super entertaining dominant force. Unless I go Survivor, then there's a couple options where yeah, they're dominating but they're fun to watch, and so that makes it okay. And also like yeah, this early game, none of this really matters because he might just get out next week, you know?
True.
And so I think that's what makes it okay. I think if he goes on a run and ends up winning 70% of the competitions he's in and wins the game, I don't know. I might feel some type of way at that point, but at this point, we're just enjoying the ride.
Yeah, I think the way that I justify it is that early game, because I think last season, I think part of the issue was it was comp beast after comp beast after comp beast, with Heisem winning like the first like I think 2 vetoes in the head of household, right? And it was like,
Yep.
oh man, he's a comp beast, let's get him out. Then it was the trade off between Jared and Cam, where it was just like back and forth, and people were annoyed. And then it went straight to Jag and a little bit of Matt in there. So like, I think that was definitely part of it. Where, which I don't know, it's like okay, so well, the difference is it's only one person this season. But I do think you're right in that I don't think that's going to last in the same way like Cameron was a big target last year because he won a couple competitions in a row, where Jag was like that second half of the season where it was boring wins because there was no going to stop him. Like there was nothing anyone could do once you get to that second half and start winning. So I think like let's wait to see what Tucker does if he makes it beyond the first half of this game to see if it's going to be boring, because like I mean I love the dude, but like I don't think he's going to get to the end. Like he can't win his way to the end. Like let's just be honest, he's going to have to lose one of these. I don't think the BB arena, or sorry, the AI arena is going to be the entire game. I imagine the next few weeks will probably nix that, I would assume. So I don't know. I'm not concerned yet, but I just know that's a conversation that a lot of people have been having. And so I just wanted to make sure we're on the same page, that, you know, we are fair in our judgment and we're not hypocrites, even though we might be sometimes.
No, it couldn't be me. I do think that there's so many people. The part that fascinates me most is he is this comp beast, very clearly better at competitions than everybody in that house, and yet everybody's gravitating towards him and like gathering around him. So you have like Chemo and T-Core, and even Quinn is like gathering around. And I feel like Quinn is attaching himself to Chucker just to be a part of the show still. When I think he's realized he's not the star, but he still wants to be a supporting character.
Sure.
And so like a bunch of people, even Cam, is that his name? Cam?
Yes.
Okay, I was pretty sure. I was like, there's a chance
Proves
I'm
my
right
point
now.
that I will make later, but go
Yeah.
on.
Yep. But even he's gravitating to Tucker. Like everybody is gathering. Joseph, everybody's gathering around him. And I don't know what the end game is because they're getting out people who can like challenge him. It feels like. And so yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting. I feel like some of those people are proud of themselves enough that they think that they can beat Tucker, which is outrageous at this point. But we'll see. We'll see how the rest of the game plays out.
That was definitely something that was said. Joseph's had a couple live feed conversations, just him and the camera kind of explaining his game, and he definitely said that this week, where he threw out, I think his wording was something along the lines of, I might be crazy, but I think I have a chance against Tucker in the final 2. I know it sounds crazy, but I think there's a possibility. So it's definitely something that's crossing his mind. Whether or not that's true, obviously, time will tell. I doubt it'll be the 2 of them in the final 2. I'll just say that now.
Yeah.
That's because,
And
yeah.
but
But
if it was a world where it was like they got to spend an hour and a half with the jury and really like break down their game step by step, he might impress them. Not in the like 90-second one question from each person format that they have now. Like there's no way that any of these people would be able to explain, assuming the game continues the way it's going and Tucker continues to be the player that he is. There's no one that'll be able to match up to him.
well, and I'll say too, in Tucker's defense, I think the assumption is that someone like Joseph could beat a big obvious target. But I think that's basing that big obvious target on previous examples, such as like Paul from, you know, 1819, Tyler from season 20. But I would argue Tucker doesn't have that same negative characteristic as far as like rushing people the wrong way as they do, even though he's this outgoing, he's this forward, he's this like, you're my target, I'm going for you. I feel like the way that Tucker handles it is much more forward, but by doing so, he doesn't get people as bitter at him. You know, like I don't know if that makes sense, and I think time will tell with this one as well. But I think like with Paul's case, like a lot of what he did was like pretty shady behind the scenes so that when people found out, they were upset with him. But Tucker is so forward, I don't know how people could be that bitter at him because they're like, you know what, at least he's who he says he is, you know?
Yeah, he seems to have this like I even heard, I don't know if it was Tucker or Quinn or just a fan that characterized their rivalry as very WWE-esque.
Sure, yeah.
Like, they're talking trash and they're arguing, and there's no part of me that feels like it's malicious at all.
No.
And like that's what I love. Like that's just fun to watch. It's fun to watch them yell at each other and argue with each other and have these moments where they call each other names, but it's all for fun. That's cool to see, and I feel like Tucker just brings that out of people. I don't know if he's just super genuine on the feeds with people, and so they like know that he's a good dude and that it's not personal or what it is. But yeah, he just doesn't rub people the wrong way.
Yeah, and I feel like that also kind of plays into why people gravitate towards him. You know, like the fact that like Chemo and T-Core honestly want to work with him. You know, this isn't just like, oh, well, you like outside of the attaching themselves to a comp piece to help them out, which I actually should say, Joseph did make a point week 1 that was going to be a strategy. So I think like that is part of it. But like for Chemo and T-Core, like they genuinely want to work with him. You know, so I do think there is something there, some charisma that people are naturally gravitating towards, and I think that's benefiting him tremendously because not only does he have the comp wins, but he has actual people that are like, you know, you got Angela and Rubina and like all these people that are just like, oh yes, we will help you out here.
Yeah, I'm so curious if those people will be able to take that shot in the end. Just because, like, yeah, he'd have to really not see it coming, but he does seem like he's got his finger on the pulse of everything that's going on. So I don't know, it'll be fun to see. Also, I think we like seeing him be good at competitions. It's going back to the initial point. Yeah. Because it keeps him around longer. Like if we got Tucker for 2 weeks and then he was gone, that would be like such a disappointing loss. But we love watching him, and so the longer he's around, the more competitions he wins, the more Tucker we get.
Yeah,
which get Tuckered out. Yeah.
Which I will say, in regards to the vote tonight, which we sadly, and I say sadly because she was on my my draft list, Brooklyn got voted out. I was definitely bummed out because I think her staying in the house would have been much more entertaining for this rivalry, and Cam adds practically nothing. But at very least, I'm glad that Quinn somehow stayed so that we continue whatever's going to happen.
And Cam going out would have been the best exit for somebody who has done nothing for the like entertainment of the show. Yeah. Like it would have been a blindside to people. It would have been a blindside to Tucker, and you know he would have made that fun to watch. And it would have been like we've gotten rid of somebody that doesn't matter and kept 2 people that are playing the game and know what they're doing.
Right, exactly. I mean, I think I don't know how much we talked about it the last time we recorded. I think so. We did watch last week's episode together despite us not recording. So it might have just been our personal conversation where I kind of mentioned the team up of Brooklyn and Chelsea. And I think this week on the episodes, they really highlighted that, how like strong of a duo they did become, to the point where the threat of the 2 of them working together did become stronger than the threat of Quinn. Which I think depending how far Tucker makes it in the game, I think his decision of saving Quinn this week will be a big factor in that. So we'll see how that outcome is. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm bummed because Chelsea and Brooklyn really turned into like these fierce competitors in a way that like I don't think we really fully saw up until they got blindsided last week, you know? So it brought out some fire in them. And so for that reason, I think I'm a little sad that Brooklyn went home because I think I don't know, whatever. You can think whatever you want about her game up until last week, but I think this past week she really showed herself like she wanted to be here and she was gonna gun for the win.
And we get to see like genuine last minute pitches, not like I know I'm
Yes.
going home, so I'm gonna give out. Like she's fighting to stay in the house and making really good points. She's making really good points, and they just decided not to go that direction for whatever reason. But yeah, she will be missed. She is a little cocky. She's a little I feel like she thinks she's real good, and I don't know about that, but
Yeah.
entertaining nonetheless.
It's definitely hard to label yourself as a big target when you haven't won yet.
Yep.
That's always the tough thing. Especially when you're sitting next to Cam, because like just based on previous stereotypes, like usually like the big strong male is better at competitions, or at least that's the general assumption from people in the house. Like when you're sitting next to him and saying you're a bigger threat than him in competitions, I don't know, it doesn't always work. That being said, I do think she was the bigger threat when it comes to the overall game of Big Brother compared to Cam. So I think a handful of people were correct in getting her out. However, I do think that this might have been the wrong decision for maybe most of the people still in the house, especially because they are going to have to deal with Tucker at some point.
And you can't just wait until like final 6 because then he gets 2 opportunities every week to save himself, and he has proven himself to be just so much better than everybody else. You never know because some of these challenges are pretty random, and some of them, he just kind of got lucky with maybe. But I don't even know if you could argue that he's just been pretty dominant. I do want to ask you, who do you think is like making decisions in the house right now? If you had to point to one or a couple people, who do you think is making final decisions?
Okay, well, despite me watching the feed sometimes, my knowledge is limited, so this is more just what I've kind of gathered, but I think that there is maybe not even underrated, maybe this is the obvious choice. I think a lot of it right now is T-Core and Chemo. I think a lot is riding on them. And mostly because of last week, I think last week's vote was definitely pushed by them and kind of confirmed. And I think that kind of bled into this week a little bit because I don't know if I think that Tucker is fully in control. I think that this vote went his way, but I don't think it was because of him. I think it was probably the collective, not the Alliance collective, the collective group thought of Chemo, T-Core, a little bit of Rubina, just kind of weighing out their options down the line. So I would say the two of them right now, but I don't think it's necessarily that strong of like they have full control.
Yeah, those two surprised me because to me they felt like they were just in the background for most of the season until last week when they're like, "All right, now we're gonna make a move." And now, yeah, I would put them firmly in the driver's seat. I feel like they're directing Tucker, or maybe not directing Tucker, but they know that his targets align with theirs, so they're kind of hiding behind that and teaming up with him in that way. But if this last week the vote came down to whether they were going to make it happen or not, and then this week I do feel like Cam was going to go. It just didn't fall that way, so they didn't take that shot. If Chelsea had been up there next, I think she stays. So
Yes,
and whether
I
or not
agree with
that's
that.
true, I think that was where it was, like comfortably. And then they're making a decision against Tucker specifically, and so the only question is, would Rabina and maybe some other people have actually pulled the trigger? But the decision was theirs whether or not that was going to happen. So it's surprising for them to go from no real power, like they just kind of talk in a corner together for 4 weeks, and then suddenly they're making the decisions for the entire house. Is crazy to see.
Yeah, and I will say, I don't, by saying they have control, I don't think they're playing the best game. I think they
No.
do spend way too much time together. And even like last week, I think the Cedric blindside, it could have been cleaner. Like a lot of it was last minute. I don't think it had to be. Like I really don't. I think they probably could have covered their tracks a little better. And I think it's going to be interesting because now that Tucker really blew up all the alliances and it's very clear, I think, first off, the blame is to Quinn for telling Pico and Chemo, but they're also mentioned in there. Like everyone knows how the information got to who at this point. Like there's almost no secrets left in this game. And so I think it's going to be interesting how much longer they can keep their target down. And actually, something in this episode that I found fascinating, there was a whole segment on Tucker getting too close to certain people, specifically Mackenzie and Cam, because they're not in his alliance.
Mm-hmm.
And I was absolutely fascinated by this segment because everything I've gathered from what I've seen, he's not really talking game with them. He's
No.
like maybe a little bit to Cam, just in the sense of like, hey, like you're gonna be safe this week. You're just a pawn. You know what I mean? Like I'll look out for you. You look out for like that. But there's no alliances. But I think it really shows how much T-Core and Chemo are just keeping to themselves. Where like
Yeah.
if you turn on the feeds, you do not see them separated. They are
Mm-hmm.
attached at the hip. They will never leave each other's side. Even like last week after the blindside of Cedric, uh, we watched the live feeds for a little bit. I actually went back and watched some more post wall comp, and
Mm-hmm.
when they should have been doing damage control, when everyone else was doing damage control, when Tucker was out there, Rubina was out there, they're all like talking. Chemo and T-Core literally sat in a room by themselves when they should have been explaining their game to other people to try. So again, luckily it worked out, but like I think it just shows why they're so threatened by Tucker because they're like, wait a minute, he's talking to players not in our alliance. You can't do that. That's not how the game works. And like that's exactly
Mm-hmm.
how the game works. If you
Mm-hmm.
only talk to people in your alliance, you're not going to go far. And so that's where I'm like, I see why they're threatened by Tucker because he is way more sociable than they are, and I see how they're going to really struggle when they have to try to pull in numbers from people that aren't working by them because they refuse to build relationships with people outside their alliance.
Oh, for sure. And yeah, I don't understand the idea of just like, first of all, if anybody decides to go after them, they're both going on the block every single time. Like it's like they're not even
Right.
considering the ramifications of just being together. And I understand that they might connect together better than they do with anybody else in the house, and that's just kind of their safe space. Sure, you gotta play the game a little bit. And yes, Tucker hanging out with people not in their alliance as much as they seem to think it was. Rubina's saying it felt like she was just jealous, but them also being like concerned with it. Talk to the guy, be like, "Hey, man, everything good? Like what?" And I guess maybe you could be nervous that you're not going to seem like you trust them if you do that. I feel like it shows that you trust them even more to bring it to their attention,
Sure.
but that you use anything in Big Brother to make your point. So it's always a risk for sure.
Yeah, and this could very well just be them trying to set up justification for the future for targeting Tucker. Which again, we see that in Big Brother all the time. People just latch on to the smallest amount of data or evidence and try to use that as a full case to justify their reason of putting someone on the block.
Mm-hmm.
So I could also see that, right? I could see if they blindside Tucker one day, they're like, well, we thought you were working with them, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me if that happens, but for whatever reason, there's lack of trust because Tucker is friendly with everyone, not just his
Yeah.
alliance. Bizarre.
On the podcast I listened to, because Rubina and Tucker both clearly like each other,
Oh,
but they're
really?
playing it off like they're shut up. They're playing it off like they are just like brother and sister. They're just close friends, whatever. Um, I guess Chemo saw them like holding, or somebody saw them like holding hands or something like that, and so now it's going around a little bit that they might be a little bit more than that. So that's drawn up some drama on that side as well, which is fun. Just to keep it on the Tucker side of things for a little bit. But yeah,
Hey, I'm down
it's a
for
little
it.
spicy, man.
I'm down for it. I am down for some more drama. I I'm so curious what's gonna happen this week with so many people. I think uh after Tucker won the HOH this week, there was definitely part of me that was excited, but then part of me that's like, oh, is this gonna be too lopsided now, right? Because like the Pentagon
Mhm.
now lost Cedric, now they're definitely gonna be targeted, and surprise, surprise, like that was the only option. Of the four people that hit the block this week, it was the four members of the Pentagon. Uh,
Mhm.
and so I do kind of hope that like someone else gets power, but like the options for kind of balancing out the sides of the house are getting smaller. Like
Mhm.
it could be Quinn, maybe. I think Chelsea would go for blood. Like that would be an ideal HOH. Uh,
Mhm.
what would Cam do? He doesn't even know. But so I don't know. I'm getting a little worried that like we have too many people in Tucker's corner, where there's a good amount of people that might not even consider putting him up at all this week.
Mm-hmm. I would love fresh blood on the block. I really would. I would love if Chelsea won and she went after Joseph and T-Core and Chemo. Like, that would be fun for me. Not because I want to see any of those people go home at all, but when it's just chaos like that, where every week it's just a new batch going up, that's so much more entertaining.
Yeah, I think the problem with Big Brother that we always see is that it's almost never smart to do that, you know? Like, it's always just the safer move to put up the people that have already been put up, you know?
Mhm.
So if it is someone like Chelsea, like those are people that she might nominate. I think Quinn would probably be there, maybe Tucker, you know? Like maybe she just starts off Quinn and Tucker as a safe, like, hey, these are two big targets in the house, and then maybe has a
Mhm.
secret backdoor planned out. I don't know, but I think like for everyone else, the obvious answers are probably going to be a combination of Quinn, Chelsea, and Cam. That's just not as exciting. Like it feels like we're going to need something new to stir up the drama, which I'm sure will happen. But I feel like we're starting to reach that point where we're getting close to reaching a lull because this initial Act 1 drama of the season is kind of coming to an end.
Yeah, I think there's still enough juice to push it on further. At least I'm hoping that there's still enough juice to push it on further. Just having Quinn and Tucker in there is just a recipe for chaos. But I mean, this is about the time in most seasons that it does peter off a little bit. So all those fans out there, be ready for that because that's definitely on the table.
Yep. This is where we decide how good of a season it truly is.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about what I think was a crazy decision this week of Tucker using the veto on Quinn. this
Yeah.
this merging of kingdoms, perhaps. This fake truce for the time being. I don't know how to describe it. I think initially Tucker did make it pretty clear on the live feeds and in the episodes that Brooklyn was the target. And that
Mhm.
came from a lot of murmurs from other people, just kind of like how strong of a duo her and Chelsea really were. Where all of a sudden Quinn's target was greatly diminished. And I also think it just has to do with like Quinn not really winning a whole lot. Like, despite all the power he's had, pretty much none of it has come from his own doing, you know?
Mhm.
So I think that's probably part of it. But I mean, like, what do you think of this move of just like, okay, I'll worry about Quinn later. Right now, I think there's a bigger threat out there.
I mean, yeah, Quinn has been repeatedly known as a liar and a snake in the house. So, like, yeah, there's people that he's working with and there's people he's still talking to, but I don't think anybody fully trusts him. You know what I mean? Like, maybe
Sure.
they do. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's interesting because he just keeps giving out information and people still give him information. But he's continuing, like, yeah, he's less of a threat than Brooklyn if Brooklyn can get you on their side, at least from his perspective. I would argue Chelsea's probably the bigger threat between the two, and I think that's just obvious because she was most likely to stay this week. But Brooklyn was making some good points, and she is a decent game player. She really is, and so I understand that side of it. And yeah, if you're nervous, it's the same as taking Angela off the block. That's his perspective. He's gonna take off the person who he's nervous
Yeah.
will get voted out instead of his target. He wants his
Right.
target.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's one of those scenarios where it's like if he doesn't make the move for Brooklyn and Chelsea, they remain, I think, the bigger threat than Quinn. But it's like
Mhm.
once it is out there that they're bigger threats, all of a sudden their threat diminishes because part of what made them a threat was their ability to not be detected, you know? And so I think like the same thing applies to Quinn, where his greatest strength was how many alliances and connections he had. So the second that's exposed, all of a sudden he has zero power, you know?
Mhm.
And so I do think like I wonder what it's going to be like with Chelsea moving forward. Like are people still going to view her as a big threat because now they're aware that her number one person went home, her alliance is blown up, everyone knows who she's working with. I
Mhm.
don't know. Like I'd be curious to see if now that threat is diminished and now her and Quinn are at a lower threat level compared to other people. But again, I don't know who those new people will be.
Yeah, it's a test of my theory that the best thing that can happen to you is your closest ally going home. The thing here is that she has a couple others left in the house, so we'll see. I think her and Quinn are done. So that severs that tie. I feel like it's just Cam that like they're publicly together. She obviously has relationships with some of the other girls because they wanted to keep her around. But those girls are kind of running things, so I think I'm excited to see Chelsea and how she rallies in the second half.
Yeah, I hope she can because I do think she's a very fun player. We did see like her and Rubina still have a decent relationship that was kind of started early on, but then they just kind of got separated when it came to alliance forming that was sort of outside their control. And that's always a tough thing. I think Mackenzie and Leah are another one that like week one, it felt like they were going to be a duo, but then the second that Matt went home, they kind of got forced to split up because they just didn't have the number. So like it is fascinating to watch those initial connections where you think, "Oh, these people are going to work together," but then somebody else decides to create a big alliance, invites you but not your person you're connecting with, and you don't have the rapport or strong enough relationship to bring them in or include them with it. So I do think that's kind of what happened with Chelsea and Rubina, so I'd be curious now that Chelsea is more of a free agent than she has been, if Rubina kind of picks that up. And I don't know, maybe gets in Tucker's ear with that. Like I think Chelsea's going to have to really switch it up because Cam is clearly not the person you want to ride with in a game like this. She can't trust Quinn. So I think Rubina might be her only option, which is also not ideal, but like it could be something.
Yeah, it's fascinating how those alliances fall because like I look at like season 20 and level 6 and the other side Faute or whatever. Like some of those people I would have seen if you just showed me a cast of them, I'm like, oh, this crew would probably work together. Like it wasn't where I would have drew that line. So it was an interesting split in that specific season. And there's a lot of seasons where it's just like, oh, this grouping is not who I would have guessed would be together. And that's part of the fun of it is just to see where those lines are drawn.
Yeah.
And yeah, sometimes it turns out like the person that you connect with the most in the house is not somebody that you're in an alliance with, and you were pulled into an alliance and weren't in a position to be like, hey, let's pull in this person, and that's just kind of how you got to ride it out. And then you see them be like best friends after the season all the time, which is fun too.
Right.
Survivor does that even more because you have built-in alliances with your tribe potentially, so it kind of irons that out for you.
Right. No,
Yeah.
that is a valid point. And it's interesting when Big Brother tries to do stuff like that, which is kind of a separate conversation. But I don't know. I'm always fascinated by like the team seasons, how those like never work at all with Big Brother. Despite them trying to have some of that like cuz like I was actually reminded of that 23 was a team season. I don't know why I forgot that, but I was like watching like some clips on TikTok or something, and it was like a clip of like one of the initial challenges. I was like, oh my gosh, like you don't even think of because it had zero impact on the game. In fact, there were people that were throwing competitions to kick people off their team. Like that's how little it actually mattered. They're like, oh yeah, we'll be vulnerable. We'll go up on the block if it means our teammate does. So I don't know. It's just not not what Big Brother does best, I guess.
There was a bigger game at play in season 23, though, to be fair.
Oh, there totally was, and I think that's 100% why that was just completely irrelevant. Like there was nothing Big Brother could do to stop what was going to happen.
Nope, not at all.
Who else do we need to talk about that we have not talked about? Oh well, I got some people. Should I go? Do you got something?
Yeah, talk to me.
I want to hear your thoughts on my guy Joseph, because 2 weeks ago, you made it very clear you didn't see what I saw. Are you closer to seeing what I'm seeing in his gameplay, or am I still way higher on him than the average person?
I'd say I'm closer. I think he is playing a good game. I think I get nervous. I think he's overconfident about his game, and that's my biggest like question mark with him. But I do think he knows what he's doing. I think he's more in like he's more valued the people around him, the people who he's allied with, than I had initially thought too. I thought people were just kind of like, yeah, totally, we're pals, and they weren't really. But I think that he has some like solid alliances with some people. That like they listen to what he says and listen to what he's doing. Um, he's kind of just a weird dude. It's kind of what I've learned in the last watching some of the episodes. Like, what may come across as like just this cockiness. He might just be a weird dude, and that's just how he interacts with the world, which is fine. It was just
Yeah.
my initial impression was like, oh, this dude. But yeah, I still think he's a little overconfident.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, he's in a great spot. I think Chelsea is the only one who might put him up.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little surprised how she called him out.
Yeah.
Like, I understand he was in that big alliance, and now he is voting on the same side as Tucker. So I understand he was part of last week's blindside. But the fact that, and I could be wrong, but I don't even think he told Tucker. He might have about the, what is it? What was the alliance called? The big alliance, the collective. My goodness. Because I like, obviously Quinn is to blame. Obviously Kimo and Tico is to blame. So the fact that she's like, Quinn and Joseph are the people I'm after now because of this, I don't know. That just surprised me a little bit, and it did worry me because I was like, oh, because it'd be one thing if I think he was actually guilty, but I'm like, I think he's probably 4th or 5th on the list of people who betrayed you, if I'm being honest.
I would say so. Quinn's obviously was in the Pentagon, so if they know about the Pentagon, it was probably Quinn.
Oh yeah, number one to
When
blame.
When it comes to Joseph, like he's one of the people who put together that alliance, and he takes credit for it every time. I started the collective, he says, every single chance he gets.
Sure, yeah.
Which also is kind of annoying. But him claiming that he started this alliance and then being the one to turn on it, maybe there's something there that's frustrating.
I guess,
to her.
but I would just assume that Joseph finding out about a 5-person alliance within his 8-person alliance, to me, that lowers him way down on who you should be targeting. I get it, like, but I don't know. I hope that this doesn't affect him long term, and he's able to use that and be like, look, I get that I turned on you, but guess what? Quinn told me that you guys were all working within our alliance. So I don't know. I think that is the first. I think that's the first time he's been targeted, though, or at least even mentioned as a threat within this game. So I don't think it's too much to worry about right now. But I think what I'm curious about him is what is his what like when is he going to take his actual first move? Because I think he's doing a great job at laying low. I think he's doing a great job at building connections, and I think he knows what he's doing. But right now what he's doing is saying that he's intentionally throwing competitions, right? He's trying not to be a target. So I am fascinated to see when he does actually make a move that paints a target on his back, when he does actually need to get blood on his hands. Because I'm not sure if this era of Big Brother will reward a gameplay that doesn't do anything, even if it is intentional.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. It's you have to make a move. You have to make a couple moves at the end to show that you really deserve it, and have subtle moves that you can specifically point to early in the game to be like, I did this. And you have to have people that back you up that you did that. I think we learned that with this last season of Survivor. Even though they're different games, it's still the jury.
Yes.
I think the thing that would make me nervous is that when Chelsea felt like she was being attacked, she immediately jumped to him, it being his fault. And I don't know why that is, and I don't know if it's an interaction that they'd had in the past or if there's a reason that she went to that. But it feels like he's an easy person to blame things on. That's like, it makes me nervous that might be the case for him.
Yeah.
And so even though he didn't do something, she didn't do something direct, and it probably was unfair. That was her first instinct, is to go after him. And what that means, I don't know, but that's an interesting thing to keep your eye on, I think.
I also think there is this interesting balance where you don't want to be too aligned with someone to the point where it's like, look how strong they of a duo they are, look how strong of an alliance they are. But you also want to be attached to someone strong enough where your absence in the game is going to affect someone else's game. You know, because I think like we kind of saw that with Chelsea this week, where people were throwing out like, oh, if it's her and Brooklyn, I think we want to keep Chelsea, or if it's Cam and Chelsea, I think we want to keep Chelsea, despite her probably
Mhm.
being the bigger threat of all three of them. The fact that she did have connection and the fact that it was clear, like, if Chelsea's in this game, she's not going to put me up, that was enough to keep her. So I think, like, I don't know who that is with Joseph. Like, is Joseph building enough individual connections where his intentions are very clear with someone? Where if Joseph, like, randomly gets on the block, let's just say as a pawn or maybe just as a casualty, is he going to
Mhm.
be oh, well, let's just get rid of him? Like, he it's not going to affect my game too much. I know he's a number. You know what I mean? Like, I think there needs to be some bond there and some tie and some almost like collateral to want to keep him there.
Yeah.
So I think he almost needs to step it up in that sense to make his like, hey, these are the people I'm really close to, so that those people can bail him out if he needs it.
Yeah, that's a super good point. He feels expendable, and that I think was kind of what I was trying to communicate last week or a couple weeks ago. But like I said, I think he does have a couple people who do view him as a strong ally now. I think Tucker does. Um, I feel confident about anybody else. Quinn might, because Quinn is just kind of grasping at straws. So there might be a couple people, but yeah, I think that's an area that he needs to improve. You don't want to be too up at that point where everybody needs you, because then you're a bigger target that way. But
Well,
there needs to be a reason for people to want you to stay, like we just saw with
yeah.
Chelsea, where she was valuable to keep for their game, so they wanted to.
Well, it's also worth noting the kind of new alliance that formed. I don't even remember what it's called, but the 5-person alliance.
Hank or whatever, Sixth Avenue.
Well, 6th Avenue was the addition with Joseph, but before that,
And it was like something tanks.
It might have just been the tanks, honestly. I don't know.
Yeah.
That was the one where it was Tucker, Rubina, Chemo, and Tikor, and Angela pretty much begged her way into it. Great move,
Mhm.
by the way. Loved it. Good job, Angela. And then Joseph was the 6th edition. So
Mhm.
they pretty much just added him because they knew he was voting with them, and it only made sense, right? So
Yeah.
I think that even shows, like, he's kind of the bottom in a way. Like, I don't know if any of those people would choose him over anyone else in that alliance, because even like Tucker, as much as like they do have this final two, like, will Tucker really choose him over Rubina? I don't know. So I do think Joseph needs to find those people, and even in the people he's voting with, I don't know if he fully has it. But again, that's like worst case scenario. I still feel pretty good about where he's sitting.
Yeah, it's one of those games that right now it looks like he's in a decent spot. I could see it just somehow collapsing this next week and him going home out of nowhere.
Right.
But there's a couple of people in that place where they're on a house of cards and it could just collapse out of nowhere.
Yeah,
Only a couple
like
people super well insulated, I think.
like Leah and Mackenzie, I think, are other examples. I think
Yeah.
they're kind of just there at this point. I don't think they're not playing the game. Like, they are having conversations, but like, they don't have those deep connections right now. They don't have those alliances where I think they are going to be a casualty on a week that gets tough, and a week it's like, what do we do? I don't know. Well, let's just get rid of Leah and and skip to the next week, right? Like, that's kind of how these people tend to go out, or they make it to the
Yeah.
end like Bowie Jane and somehow get final three. That's kind of how it
Yeah,
goes.
it's definitely possible, and that's one worry about this idea of putting up 3 people and just creating more enemies. It makes this beginning still so entertaining, of course, but when there's more targets, there's less of the fodder just going out, of the people who just aren't great or who are just taking up space. There's less of them going out. We have seen a couple of those go, so I don't think it's the end of the world, but that makes me a little nervous that people who aren't doing anything are going to make it deep because of it.
Yeah, I think as fun as these past 2 weeks were, I think it is a little. I don't know. Actually, between Cedric and Rubina, I know you're not as high in Rubina, but like, I do think she brings something to the table.
I'm a little bit higher. Seeing her like going to make a decision, even though it's against Tucker, made her more interesting to me.
Yeah,
Because up until that, she had been Tucker's love interest to me more than anything else, just because she hadn't done much.
yeah. I mean, that's fair. She has had up until last week almost no DRs until she was put on the block, so that's fine. But I think like that's a toss up. But then this week, I think losing Brooklyn over Cam is kind of a loss, you know. I'm just like kind of looking through. I think like obviously Kenny was a great boot, you know. So yeah,
Miss
it
him
is.
so much.
Yeah, I don't know. I think of the people we have left in the game, and I think we kind of talked about this in person last week, but for the most part, I think a lot of people are playing this game strong. I think if I would have to like throw a couple names out there, it'd probably be like Cam and maybe Leah that I'm like, okay, do something more, please. Anything. But besides that, I'm not too upset with the cast we have left.
No, and I mean, I feel like we do this every year. We're like, oh, everybody in here is still playing the game, but then everybody's gonna go out except for like the lowest 3 on that list still. So the players you love the most and the obviously strong players rarely make it to the end. So I don't know. I'm hoping that this year will be different, but that's the standard usually.
Yeah. Yep, that's how it goes. Who else do we need to talk about? Anyone?
Ooh.
Talked about.
Talk some chemo and T-Core.
Do we have to say much more on Angela? She's kind of blended into the background.
She has, but she's still trying to fight. She's still trying to start fights. It's kind of surprising.
Yeah,
But
she
never
has
gonna win
her.
anything. She's so clueless. Like I think they're keeping her around because she doesn't matter that much, and
Wait,
that
did
feels
you
mean
say
to
she's
say,
not
but
going to win
that's
anything?
no. By that I mean the game.
Okay, you don't think she could win
Like,
in the end?
I don't see a clear path for her to. I don't see a good path for her to
What
win.
if it's her versus Cam or her versus Leah?
That'd be a heck of a shift. I'm gonna go with Cam or Leah though.
Really? I think she's done pretty well for herself. I think just the mere fact that she has become probably like the 5th or 6th biggest threat in this house after a week 1 that she had. I don't know. I think again, once you get to the end, if you can tell that story, I think she's got something there. Now, will she get to the end? I don't know.
Will she be able to tell that story?
I did love the charcuterie board segment. That was very funny.
It feels like something that if you're just an adult and you are like, hey, maybe don't eat my food so that I can have it next week. Like, there's no way Brooklyn was just like, we're eating your food, and she said no, and Brooklyn said you don't have a choice.
Yeah. I mean, maybe.
Like, there's no
I don't.
way, right?
You know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Could be.
And also, everybody else was eating that food. To say that it was just Brooklyn is you just wanting to have an enemy.
Well, her and Brooklyn have been the most passive aggressive. It's been this competition of like who's more of a mom, not in the sense like experience or kids or anything like that, but it was like who can emphasize that they're a mom more than the other person, and it's been ongoing. Like every conversation they had, there was what was it when Angela won HOH and she was targeting Brooklyn in the HOH competition. Brooklyn came to her after, like had this one-on-one, and it was like, look it, I'm just a mom. And Angela goes, yes, I'm a mom. And Brooklyn goes, I'm a mom. And it just went back and forth where it's like they are so passive aggressive because seemingly on the surface they're like, we have this agreement, we're moms, let's look out for each other. And then as soon as they walk out, they're like, oh, I'm going for her, I'm going for her, I'm going like. So I kind of love how bitter Angela gets at people and how passive aggressive she is with it. And I can only hope that because Brooklyn is gone now, that she's gonna find a new target. Because let's be honest, she has to dislike someone. She like doesn't have it in
She
her
has to. Yeah, that's a
love
part of her
everyone
character.
equally.
Absolutely.
So I'm rooting for her. I want her to win. No, I don't know.
No, thank you.
Is there anyone else you want to talk about or any other big events?
No.
Revelations.
I feel like we've touched on everybody as much as I wanted to. I don't have anything else to really add.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a good season. Next week when we find out about the AI instigator,
Yeah, that'll be this week.
which is I still don't fully understand, and I probably could if I looked into it more. But basically, they just spill the tea, right? Cause
They're gonna use the
spread
I
rumors.
think they're gonna use the like AI thing more, and it's gonna be like, hey, I want this Tucker to say this, and it'll be Tucker saying something, and I want this person to, and it'll be like them spreading rumors or opening things up. I think it'll be that kind of thing. I think, from what I've heard, at least the podcast I was listening to, the way that Quinn's power was initially described made it sound like it was going to have this sort of thing where he would be able to start rumors and cause chaos in the house. But since everybody knew it was Quinn, that didn't really happen. And so I think this isn't like an audible to give somebody else that opportunity to just cause chaos.
They probably just spent a lot of time and effort on this technology to deepfake the house guests, and then it got ruined because everyone knew who was doing it.
When it's that kind of power, God, I'm mad at Quinn still about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, can you imagine the reveal of Angela being like, wait a minute, I didn't make these nominations. This isn't fair. That would have been so cool. And then Quinn
Or
just,
genuinely being like, that's not me, what's going on, and having no idea what's going on. That would be awesome.
and the fact that they still went through the motions of bringing Quinn in the DR and having him not vote as if, like, that's the kind of just
Mhm.
consistency I love with Big Brother, where they continue to
to.
just push things that don't matter.
They have to. At that point, it's like, this was the thing. You got to do it.
The commitment's real. All right, well, we'll look forward to that. Can we still vote? I don't even know. Should I go vote
Maybe.
for someone?
I can't imagine Tucker doesn't get it. And I'm hoping Tucker uses it to spread rumors as himself, and so he can get mad at people.
Well, that's what I think. From my knowledge of this, I think there is a correct way in doing it, and I don't know if everyone will do it the correct way. But I think what you gotta do is you gotta sprinkle some truth in there, along with some lies, and you also
Mhm.
need to frame yourself to a certain extent. Would you agree
Yeah.
with that?
Oh, absolutely.
And I just feel like somebody's gonna get it, and they're just gonna go all in on one person, and it's gonna be very obvious. And they'll honestly, knowing this house, they're probably gonna tell someone. That person's gonna tell someone, and then it's not even gonna be a secret by like day 2.
No. And knowing most houses, that's just become the reality is that they're all doing that.
That and Survivor. I mean, we say it every season of Survivor. There's like no hidden
Mhm.
advantages anymore, which is a weird phenomenon with this current era of reality TV.
Honestly, if you found yourself in that situation, would you, no matter what, would you not tell anyone about an advantage you found?
I would like to think I wouldn't, only because of what I've seen. At very least, maybe like one person, but I don't know. I mean, Quinn told like 4 people, so it's like
Yeah.
I think there's a stark difference from like one person to like an 8-person alliance, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know. All right. Well, I think that's all I got. That's all you got.
All right.
Wrap this up.
We
For
made
more
it through.
episodes, visit notgameallpersonal.com. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you listen to podcasts, really. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube at NGAPPod. That is at NGAPPod. I'm Nathan. Tony. We will see you next week.
Remember to love one another.